everybody. Yeah, it's a real pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce today's keynote speaker. And yeah, I think I might be a little bit biased, but we've kept the best for last. So yeah, just a quick. I've been given strict instructions not to talk too long. So just tell you a little bit about Judy. She was born in the Transkei, the Wild Coast, just up the drag here. So she's a real local, and I think she holds something of a record amongst all recreational fishers that I've ever spoken to. She caught her first fish when she was 2 years old. Her dad was a very avid fisherman, and she insisted, she wasn't into catch and release in those days, so insisted taking her fish and putting it under the pillow, and she slept with it for the first night. So that's my Judy. And yeah, Dr. Judy Mann-Lang. She was Judy Lang, her maiden name, and she got the man part from me. And she uses it intermittently in her publication, so you can get a bit confused. But yeah, Judy did her, her undergrad and her honors and masters at Rhodes University. She was in the same department that you've heard about a lot during this conference, Tom Hecht's Department of Ichthyology and Fisheries Science. She did her master's on validating daily growth rings in Sparrowed otoliths. Amazing work, but lots of very, very detailed electron microscope type work. And she got her master's cum laude, which was a great achievement. After finishing masters, she started her first job at the old aquarium in Durban at the end of West Street. It's an organization called, we call it SAMBRA, but it's the South African Association for Marine Biological Research, and it was associated with the aquarium in Durban. And she started there as the education officer. So for 10 years, she ran the education department, and you'll see that coming out in her talk today. Her passion is people and communication and education. She did have a short 18-month interlude where she tried her hand at monitoring recreational fisheries, but yeah, she got a bit fed up with that quite quickly with all the biases, and went back to education. After 10 years, she then ran the aquarium. She became the director of SeaWorld, and that involved moving from the old aquarium at the end of West Street in Durban. It was an aquarium built same sort of size and era of Manly Aquarium for the Aussies here in Sydney. That's what our old aquarium looked like, and we moved to the new complex at Ushaka Marine World near the harbour at the point. And at the time, Ushaka was the 10th biggest aquarium in the world. So it was a massive movement, and Judy was in charge of that whole process. So after 10 years of managing 200 staff, she then took the top position and became the CEO of SAMBRA. She did that for 2 years, but lots of politics, lots of stress. She handed the baton over to Larry Ullerman, also another student from Tom's department, and she moved sideways into she became a conservation strategist, and with that she persevered, followed her heart and finished a PhD, which she did at the University of Queensland, in looking at how aquariums change the behavior of the people that come in and come out. And yeah, after that, she then took a job with Two Oceans Aquarium in Cape Town, where she's still there now as a conservation strategist. And yeah, she knows a lot. She's got a very diverse kind of career, and I'm really looking forward to your talk. Thanks, Judy.
Okay, working. Right, thank you very much, Bruce. It's the first time I've ever been introduced by my husband, so this is a real change. So thank you for that. Good morning, everybody. I am so impressed to see so many of you awake. How many of you are part of that late night 1 o'clock crowd? Yeah, oh, well done, guys. I think that this shows two things. One, that fishermen really are hardcore. And two, as scientists, you can still do the fun part, the fishing part, and then get up in time to listen to a keynote on something that isn't really scientific. So thank you so much. Well done. Give yourselves all a nice round of applause. Now, when I was asked to do a keynote for this Rec Fish conference, it's my first Rec Fish conference, I was really, really excited. But doing a keynote is not only an honor and a privilege, but it's also totally terrifying. So thank you, Warren and team. You've given me many sleepless nights. And especially doing it on the last day. Once you've listened to all these amazing talks, and you go, oh, yeah, no, let me include that. Oh, that was a good, oh, yes, good point. Oh, he sees it my way, yes. So it really has been incredible. So thank you very much. Let's go for it. I've titled my talk, Communicating with Recreational Anglers, a Tacklebox for Scientists. So Bruce has given you a little bit about my story. Thank you, Bruce. I'll cut this one short, but there's me with my first fish and my dad on the far left-hand side. You can see he caught a much bigger fish than me, but mine was equally important. And that was really where the bug bit. And I knew from a very early age that I wanted to study fish. So after school, I started off at Rhodes University, and on my first week or so, we had the opportunity to meet some of the professors, and I went along to meet Professor Hecht with some of my colleagues. And I said to Professor Hecht, I want to study ichthyology when I finish my undergrad. And he said, you're going to have to do maths until third year. And he said, as a female, I'm not sure you're going to succeed, or words to that effect. I was devastated. I really tried at the maths. There was nothing I could do about the female bit. I tried hard at the maths. I did first year maths. I did lessons. I did 2 o'clock dawnies in the middle of winter in Grahamstown. And after 52% passing, I thought that my dreams of becoming an ichthyologist were over. But I persevered, and then very gratefully was accepted for my honors and my masters. And being part of the Department of Ichthyology and Fisheries Science has probably been one of the most incredible journeys of my life. And you can see today the caliber of the staff, the caliber of the students. We punch way above our weight. But what's more important than that scientific punching is that community that we have. We are still connected and friends after over 30, 40 years. And that is a testament to the leaders of the departments over the years. So thank you for that. But I did my master's, as Bruce said, on fish ear bones, on otoliths. And after 3 years of staring down a microscope, counting daily growth rings, I realized that there must be more to life. No offense to people who work on otoliths. They are fascinating. There's a wonderful book at the back. It's about this big of otoliths of fish of Southern Africa. It's a fascinating subject, but it wasn't for me. And I realized that actually communicating with people was my passion. That's what I love doing. So I started, as Bruce said, at the SeaWorld as the education officer, and just continued in there. And over my career, I've realized that working with people is really what inspires me and what I enjoy, and my career has carried on since there. And I'm not going to go through all the others because Bruce has given you that bit. So what I'd like to do today is just share some of the lessons that we have learned in communication over the last 30 years. And when I say lessons that we've learned, it's also some of the mistakes that we've made. Some of our speakers have spoken, Stephen spoke about the importance of sharing mistakes. Nelly spoke about the importance of sharing our failures as well. And we've learned a lot through what we got wrong, as much as from what we've got right. And that little time that I spent running the National Marine Lionfish System, which was South Africa's catch and effort database for recreational anglers, really taught me a lot. I moved into the position because I felt conservation needs us to work with the anglers. They're the ones who are having the impact on the fish stocks right now. We don't have time for the children to grow up. We need to work with fishermen. And after 18 months, I realized, oh my goodness gracious, fishermen are really, really hard. I'm going to go back to working with the kids. But my career has come a bit of a full circle now, and now a lot of what I do, and I have done for many years, is actually working with recreational fishers. So this is something that all of you know, but it's always worth reminding. We don't manage fish, we manage fishers. And this is something that we in the recreational fishing world, I think, are much more aware of than in the broader marine science community. So when I go to marine science conferences, the human dimensions is actually a very small part of the conference. And what I've noticed has been amazing at this conference is that it's been such a strong focus. And let's have a look at that. A student that I worked with a while ago, Shaheen Sayed, analyzed over 46,000 papers from 21 journals over a 26-year period. And these were papers all on fisheries, various aspects of fisheries. And what he noted was that only 7.3% of the papers focused on the people, the predator, while 92% focused on the prey, the fish. So this was in 2017. Things have moved on, but I think in traditional fisheries management, it's still pretty much weighted in favor of the prey and less on the predator. But I did a quick analysis last night looking at this particular RecFish conference, and we just very, very casually grouped the presentations into governance, monitoring, and management. That accounted for about 38% of the presentations, including app designs, data management, etc. Then we looked at fish biology, behavior, climate change, and movement. That's about 33%. And the human dimensions accounts for 29% of the presentations. And it would be very interesting to do an analysis like this, retrospectively looking at the last series of RecFish conferences to see if this balance has changed. But this is really, really encouraging. And I think that as the recreational fishing community, you can hold your heads up high in the wider marine science community because you are actually leading the way in many respects on including the human dimensions into your science and practice. The next lesson I've learned over the last 30 years is that we need to communicate more effectively. We don't just need to communicate more. We need to learn how to do it effectively. And when I look at most of the papers that we've written over the last 10, 15 years, all of them seem to have somewhere in the paper, in the discussion, need to communicate more effectively. We've often looked at communication as something that's easy. It gets tagged on at the end of the project. We need to be far more intentional about our communication. We need to learn from the experts in communication and use their skills. And that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit more today. So I would like to introduce you to my research species. We've met all of your research species. This one's mine. Homo sapiens distribution is global. We're primarily terrestrial, although some of you are erring a little bit on the subaquatic. Our diet, we're omnivorous. We have no known predators. We're one of the few species that engages in sexual conduct just for fun. Our reproductive rate is exponential, and I think I can only describe our behavior as irrational. On the IUCN, we are definitely listed as least concern on the red list. So this is who I study. So let's move on to some tips to make it easier. How do we move from our papers on the left into something that's simple and easy for anglers to understand? The first thing we need to know is that it's all about behavior. We are trying to change anglers' behavior. All of our communication and our research, etc., comes down to the behavior of anglers. Now, how many of you here are anglers? Okay, so yeah, pretty good number. How many of you have changed your behavior as an angler over the last 10, 15, 20 years? From catch to... Oh, my word. Okay. I think my point is made. Many of us are changing our behavior. And the reasons we've changed our behavior are varied. And this is just an example of someone I know reasonably well who's moved on from the catch to kill to the catch and release. And I think that all of us can identify with this change in behavior. We've experienced it ourselves. Was changing your behavior easy? Yep. Sometimes easy. Who is sometimes tempted to keep a little bit over the bag limit? Okay, Tom, thank you. Yes. Who sometimes maybe kept a slightly undersized fish? No one's going to admit to. Okay, thank you. We do have some honest people in the audience. Okay, so changing behavior is sometimes easy, sometimes it's quite difficult, and we're still often tempted to not do exactly what's right. So behavior change is a very, very complicated field. Now, those of you who are not anglers, have any of you, or has anybody here ever tried to stop smoking? Okay. Was stopping smoking easier than changing your fishing behavior? No. So some people have tried to stop smoking. It's difficult. Has anyone here ever tried to lose weight? Okay, yes, quite a few. Was it easy? No. Start a new exercise regime. Anyone started a new exercise regime? Was it easy to keep to it? Yeah, okay. So changing behavior is difficult, and I'm emphasizing this because when we talk about changing fisherman behavior, we often talk about it as though it's something that you just do. It's not something that you just do. It takes time. Now, who is really good at getting us to do something that we don't really want to do? Who's good at getting us to buy stuff we don't often need? Okay, the marketing world. So the marketing world have for a very, very long time developed the skills of making us do something that we perhaps don't necessarily need to do or even wanted to do. And for a long time, they've been the leaders in behavior modification. But over time, this group of work called community-based social marketing has started to harness the skills and the insights of the marketing world and apply it for community good. The first people that did this a lot were working in the health behavior world. So they were looking at how to change people's behavior with respect to healthy eating, etc., etc. So let's have a look at some of the examples where they've actually been really successful. Who can remember the days when you never wore a safety belt in your car? Okay, people with gray hair are generally putting up their hands. Now, every single car is equipped with a safety belt and people use it. It's just what you do. Who can remember the days when drinking and driving was not something that was frowned upon? Okay, now it's just not done. Okay, I'm not going to ask you anything about the top one. That one's just for you. So, as we start understanding community-based social marketing, we start seeing how the principles of marketing can be used effectively for social good, for conservation. And this is one of the fields that's really driving behavior change, not just obviously from a fish point of view, but looking at wider behavior change, whether it's recycling behavior, saving resources, water, electricity, etc., etc. So I would really, if you're into and you're keen on behavior change, I would definitely say study community-based social marketing. It's one of the easiest frameworks I've found to apply to our world of conservation. When I started at SeaWorld, I had this belief that if people only knew, they would change their behavior. Who has once upon a time thought that if I only told them the facts, they would change their behavior? Okay, many of us have tried that. But in actual fact, all our research on behavior shows that there is a massive knowledge behavior gap. I can know all about sustainable seafood, and I can know about the bycatch with prawns, but when I am faced with that delicious bowl of prawns, sometimes my knowledge doesn't really help to change my behavior. And this is one of my favorite ones, because if knowledge changed behavior, nobody would smoke. So that's the first thing we need to remember, is just telling people more facts is not going to change their behavior. And this is a good example from some of the work that we did a few years ago. And I want you just to look, don't worry about SV in 1 and 2, those are just different surveys that we did. But if you look at minimum size limit, we asked fishermen, do you agree with the minimum size limit? Yes, 91% of them agree with it. Do you disobey the minimum size limit? 46% said that they disobey the size limit. They know what it is, they know why they should do it, they still disobey it. So we have a knowledge and a behavior gap. The next one is the intention-action gap. Just because I intend to do something doesn't mean that I necessarily do it. I could intend to start running, but sometimes that couch is really, really inviting. How many of you have intended to never use another plastic bottle for water again? And you've even bought yourself a really nice bottle, beautiful turtles on it. And then, oh my goodness, you forgot it. Or you left it somewhere else. Or you forgot to fill it. Or the bottle was there, so I might as well just use it. There is an intention-action gap that we've noticed. And this is from other work that we did, and that we see that fishing behavior, we asked the fishermen in this particular survey, the taggers, we asked them what are the most important things to ensure good fish survival. You'll remember from the quiz, what are the most important things to ensure good fish survival? And taggers said keeping the fish in the water before and after tagging. They frequently do it. 79% of them do it frequently or always. And yet we know Matthew did work observing fishermen, and although they have the intention of doing it, the actual behavior on the water is quite different. So we have an intention-action gap. So how do we take our fishermen from this on the left-hand side, how do we help them move over their habits and barriers all the way over to create the support, which will come. Who am I pointing at? Okay, so how do we get them from the left-hand side through the sea of barriers and habits? Okay, we'll get there. What is the support that we need to create, which is the crux of what I'm going to be talking about, to get us over to that sea of responsible fishing? Yay, we got there eventually. Okay, we're going to need to move on. Okay, so policy creates rules, psychology supports compliance. So to support sustainable recreational fisheries, we need to move beyond enforcement and awareness to strategic communication and behavior change. And most of our behavior change, when we've looked at it in fisheries management, we've looked at law enforcement was the traditional one. Then we thought that if we created more awareness, it would be fine. Now we're focusing on technological interventions. How can we make it easy for fishermen to do what we want them to do? And how can we use strategic communication? So I'd like to introduce you now, if the thing changes, to what I'm calling our recreational angler communication tackle box. And we're dividing it into three different phases. In phase 1, what we're looking at is identifying the angler. Know who holds the rod. In phase 2, we're looking at defining the specific behavior we're wanting to change. And then we're looking at the barriers, what's stopping them doing it. Then we're moving on to the design phase Who are the most important messengers? What are the benefits to the angler from doing that behavior change? How can we support them using nudges and prompts? Then we move into the implementation phase, thinking about what are the potential spillovers or unintended consequences, and ultimately evaluating it. How effective was it? So the first thing is to know who is your audience. You don't start a love letter with "to whom it may concern." So understanding who your audience is vital. And that's where some of this amazing work that I've seen here has become so visible and clear. And this book, I think, is something that I wish I'd read 15 years ago. So I'm really looking forward to delving into it, because it's really helping us to understand who is your audience. We need to understand the motivations. Why do they do what they do? Who are they? The next important lesson that I've learned is that we all wear invisible lenses. And I think Valeria and Steve both spoke about how different people view fish differently. Each of us wears a lens based on our upbringing, our experience, what we've done, who we've done it with. And these lenses are how we interpret the world. But often we don't realize that other people wear a completely different set of lenses. They see the world completely differently. And the only way for us to connect effectively with the people we're communicating with is if we take off our glasses and put on the glasses of the people we're talking to. Only then will we be able to see the world through their eyes and start to understand them better. So whatever the message is that you're wanting to convey, whether it's behavior change, policy, whatever it is, think about how all of the different audiences that you may be talking to will perceive your message. Try to take off your glasses and look at the glasses through the eyes of the person you're communicating with. The next one is really, as we talk about this, and this is just delving a bit more into it, is really understanding who holds the rod. So this is taking off our glasses and understanding our audience. And each audience is slightly different. So we've got recreational shore anglers who've got a set of motivations, their knowledge, compliance, and attitude that could be slightly different to a catch and release angler. It could be slightly different to a catch to eat shore angler. They would have different motivations, different knowledges, different compliance. And all of this work comes from a whole range of studies that have been done in South Africa on our anglers. But each one of these studies is helping us to understand who holds the rod. We can see that competitive shore anglers are motivated very differently to just a recreational shore angler. Their knowledge of the regulations might be quite different to a subsistence angler. Their compliance might be different. Their attitudes towards nature might be different to somebody who is just going out there to catch some food, although sometimes we're finding that there is a lot of similarity between anglers in terms of their connectedness to nature. And then fishing guides. This is work that Matthew and the team did, really understanding fishing guides, who are another completely different group, and understanding what motivates them, what are their attitudes. So this is really delving into who holds the rod. Now, as I go into my discussion on behavior change, I want you to remember the Pareto law, which came about many, many years ago. And what Pareto said is that 10% of society are going to break the law. No matter what you do, they're going to break the law. They're inherently lawbreakers. They're inherently bad, we would say. 10% of society are inherently good. They will always do the right thing, regardless of what's happening around them. They are the people who carefully take the shopping trolley and put it back in the shopping trolley bay. They don't just leave it somewhere near the car, even though nobody's looking. So they're the good ones. But it's the 80% in the middle that we can influence. So those are the people that we need to focus on. For the 10% that are going to do this whenever they get a chance, there is only one solution, and that unfortunately is enforcement. So we are not talking about that 10% now. We're talking about that 80% in the middle. So another thing that we often need to think about when we're trying to really understand our audience is, instead of listening to respond, how to listen to understand. And Andy spoke about this in his presentation on the first day. And this is, I think, where we're starting to really understand our anglers using fisher ecological knowledge. Try to see the world through their eyes, listening carefully, understanding what's important to them. How do they experience these fish? Spawning grounds, Jody spoke about. Jennifer spoke about this as well. So really using their knowledge to help guide our communication. The next step, step 2, is what behavior do you want to change? And here we need to be really careful because vague goals yield vague results. And a good example of this was the Responsible Angler Initiative from WWF. It was done with the best intentions. It was done really, really well in terms of its look, its feel, its content, but unfortunately achieved nothing because it had a whole lot of vague goals there that nobody really took any notice of. So if you want behavior change to happen, you need to be very, very specific. Define the action. What do you want the fisherman to do? Is it a once-off change? So on the left, you can see competitive anglers measuring the fish in the water before throwing it back. This is not something that just happened. This was something that happened over a long period of time of our ORI scientists, our leading anglers in the South African Shore Anglers Association working together to change the rules of competitive fishing from catch to kill to catch and release. But once that change had happened, it was done. It was a once-off behavior change. And then that could be implemented through all of the competitions in that particular union and has spread over to other unions as well. So this is a once-off change. So you can work towards a once-off change in a system that will then last. Or you can look at crimping your barbs on the right-hand side. That's a repeat activity. That's something you need to remind people about over and over again. So understanding if it's a once-off change you're looking for, which will change a system, or something that you need to repeat. And then breaking down that activity. So we want fishermen to purchase circle hooks because it's much better for catch and release. But it's not as simple as just purchasing circle hooks. Firstly, you have to convince the angler that it works. Then you have to work out where he can buy them. If he can't get them, he's not going to use them. Then he actually has to go out and buy them. Then he has to remember to pack them in the tackle box. Then he's got to remember when he puts the bait on not to choke the hook because otherwise it's not going to work. Then he's got to remember not to strike perhaps the way he always has. Only then will he be able to remove the hook easily and release the happy fish. And there could be a barrier at every stage of this behavior. So when you're thinking about behaviors that you want your anglers to change, think about breaking them down into smaller pieces and make sure that you overcome the barriers at each of those stages. So break it down into the small pieces because that behavior may not be changing, not because they just don't want to, but because it's difficult for them at one of the stages. The next one, if we're looking at catch and release fishing. Catch and release is a really good term, but what does it really mean? How do we facilitate that catch and release behavior? And I think this here, I must give credit to all the people who've been involved in the Keep 'em Wet campaign. It really has helped to explain to anglers exactly what behavior you want them to do. Not just catch and release. Keep them wet. That's one of the aspects of catch and release. And how can we facilitate this behavior more effectively by making sure anglers have got buckets, etc., etc. So can you see how we're moving from just telling anglers what we want them to do to really understanding the behavior? Step 3 is to understand what's stopping them. Why are they not changing? We can't design a solution until we really understand the barriers. So is it a knowledge gap? They don't know where the barrier or where the boundaries of a marine protected area are. Is it a financial gap? Circle hooks are actually quite expensive. Is it a habit? I keep forgetting my bucket at home. Is it capacity? I don't know how to use that downrigger thing to take fish back down to the bottom of a boat. Is it technical? They can't find measuring stretchers. Is it inconvenience? It's just too much of a hassle. Or is it, I just don't care? Each one of these barriers we need to unpack, understand, and then see how we can overcome those barriers. The next step is to look at who do they listen to. And a couple of people have mentioned this, and I think that the Murray Cod example was a really good one of influential anglers who can change behavior. The work that we did with our taggers showed, and I know many of you will resonate with this because I've read some of the papers, 55% of our anglers said that they trust other anglers. So fishermen listen to fishermen. 22% said social media, including YouTube, etc. About 9% said websites and online blogs, and then the rest was a bit less. But this is pretty standard, I think, in many areas, except for Germany, that doesn't really like social media, from what I've heard. So who do fishermen listen to? How do we target those people? The next thing is really, once you know who they listen to, choose a trusted messenger. Choose somebody that the fishermen trust, somebody that speaks their language, somebody that understands them and understands what you're trying to do. Or you could be the person yourself. But importantly here, building trust and respect takes time. And it's about relationships. This is not something that happens instantly. And I think that all of you know that this work that you're doing is the long term. We're in this for the long run. This is not a short-term fix. This is Bruce talking to some of the ski boat fishermen, and at the end of that meeting, he was just about punched. So just be careful, careful of who we put in front of the fishermen. So recruit messengers, anglers, trust, and influencers. People like Rob Kyle is a great example. Every time he posts a photo of proper fish handling, people are seeing that and going, okay, this is how the good guys do it. Influential club anglers, and we've got an example of that coming up with what Warren's been doing. Barry Wareham, Mike Bellis, they work together with Bruce to change the behavior of the anglers in the clubs. And fishing guides. Matthew's research showed that fishermen really trust their guides. So who's a guide in the audience? Who's a fishing guide in the audience? Okay, only one. There must be a few more. You have incredible power. You have the power to influence the fishermen hugely. So it's a power to use wisely. And then tackle shops. Tackle shops have a big role to play. And I was so pleased when I saw this coming up in some of the papers that I read a little while ago coming out of the States. We all know the inordinate amount of time fishermen spend in tackle shops. It is something that is surprising. It makes shoe shopping look like a really short trip to the shops, I have to say. Yes. But how well trained are the tackle shop owners? How knowledgeable are the people behind the counter? These are incredibly powerful allies in what we do. But we really, really need to train the staff. We need to look at a concerted program working with tackle shop owners and with the tackle shop store, the servers behind the counter. They have incredible power to change behavior and to influence anglers, but we need to work with them more effectively. And then the next one is looking at clubs. And here I've got to give a shout out to Warren and his team for the amazing work that they've done with RASPL. And you've seen from several presentations over the course of this conference how effective this has been. This has changed the behavior of those competitive anglers. And that's changing not only their behavior while they're fishing, but also spilling over to their behavior when they're fishing not in competitions, influencing other anglers. So this is an incredibly good example of how individuals can change behavior for the long term. Now, just as a quick aside, often the criticism we have of scientists is that the public don't understand what we say. We use words like otoliths, we use gonochorists, we use hermaphrodites, we use all sorts of complicated CPUEs and things like that. Most people don't understand what we're talking about. We need to talk the language of fishermen. And you guys have got such an advantage because most of you are fishermen. So when scientists say theory, people hear, it's an idea, speculation. When scientists say uncertainty, people hear, I don't think they're really sure. When scientists say error, people say, aha, you see, they made a mistake. When scientists say probability, people hear maybe. And my favorite one, when scientists say, I'm going on a field trip, people really know you're going on holiday. So watch your language carefully. And then the next thing that I just want to mention is that as a scientist, we're taught to communicate with the details first. So we start off with the introduction. Then we go on to the methods. Then we go on to the results. Then we go on to the discussion. And finally, the conclusion. The people we're talking to don't have time for all that. They want to know, bottom line, so what? Let's get to the point. Then if you've got time with them for a little bit longer, you can go into all the rest. So think about turning your communication on its head. Start off with the so what, and then give your background information if you've kept their attention for long enough. Bruce said to me, well, why don't they just read the abstract? How many of you have tried to get the entire story into 150 words of the abstract? You're missing a lot. So think about carefully turning our information upside down. Let's start with the point first. Step 5 is what's in it for the anglers. What is the benefit to them of changing behavior? And this is something I think we all need to think very carefully about. We know what's in it for the fish or for the industry we're in, but what's in it for the individual angler? Is it about making sure we've got healthy fish stocks? Is it about great fishing experiences? Often what we found in our research that a motivation to change behavior is for children and grandchildren, for future generations. So think about the benefits. And then we start looking at how do we support the change. We're on to step 6 now. And here we bring up the concept of social norms. We are social beings. We do what other people do. Have any of you got into a lift and turned to face the back of the lift? Has anyone tried that? Okay, and what happens? People go, she's looking at me. This is strange. We're social beings. It's conventional. You get into a lift and you all turn and you face the door. The moment somebody breaks that and faces the people, people feel uncomfortable. So we are social beings. We do what other people around us do. And this is something we can use for good in our behavior change for fishermen. How do we make doing the right thing the socially normal thing? And I know that Chris has got lots of examples of this. And this is where I really want to call out editors of magazines, people who do social media. Every time you post a picture like the one on the right-hand side of somebody exhibiting bad behavior, we are reinforcing that bad behavior. We might think that by showing pictures of bad fish handling, we're telling people this is what you shouldn't do. Subconsciously, we are reinforcing that bad behavior because we see it often enough, we think that that is the norm. As fishermen, every time you post a photo of yourself with a fish right out of the water, with a fish on the sand, showing something that shows bad handling, we are reinforcing that bad behavior. And that's a shout out to all of us to look at our own behavior. Bruce sometimes gets a bit grumpy with me when I say, oh no, we really shouldn't use that photo. He says, but it's fine. I say, no, it's not 100% right. So think every time you post a photo, are you reinforcing good or bad behavior? And this is on the cover of Ski Boat magazine, which has a lot of influence. And we heard a really good talk about how this can change with French magazines. Social norms, again, coming through really strongly with social media. And this was a study done by Katie Allison and colleagues. And they looked at how one of the top fishing websites has changed over time in terms of catch and release behavior, pro-environmental behavior. And they have seen over time how pro-environmental behavior has become the norm. And that's been driven by a really conscious and environmentally aware editor or moderator. So he's pushing and promoting socially responsible, good fishing behavior. So this is a way we can start to drive those social norms. And then celebrate anglers doing it right. I thought this was a very cute little video. Unfortunately, you can't hear the sound, but this is a good example of catch and release. And at the end of it, he says, "Bye-bye, fish, I love you." The next thing is, how can we support the change by providing solutions? Make the right choice the easiest choice. Can we provide length weight calculators to avoid having to weigh fish? Can we provide stretchers to make sure fish are not dragged up on the beach? Can we provide somewhere for the anglers to discard their waste, their line, so that it doesn't land up around a seabird? What can we do to make the right choice the easy one? And then what can we do to provide the tools to facilitate the change? So don't just demand compliance. How do we enable it? How can we provide downriggers on all the boats so that they can release their fish safely? How can we make sure that buckets become something that every fisherman takes with him when he's going fishing? How can we make it easy to access circle hooks? How can we make measuring stretchers easy to access? We need to try and make it as easy as possible for people to do the behaviors we want them to do. How can we use nudges and prompts? Because behavior happens at the gear. So you can talk to a fisherman beforehand, but in actual fact, it's at the moment when he makes the decision of how he's going to dispose of his line, how he's going to use his hook, how he's going to handle his fish. Can we put little messages on the bait box, on the cooler boxes? Can we make sure that the rulers, measuring rulers, are put onto every form of vessel? What can we do to make that behavior as easy as possible? Because that's the only way we're actually going to change it. And will these nudges and prompts really help? We need to try. And then I used ChatGPT, and it did a beautiful bin your trash or take it home, make your actions count. Who here produces fishing tackle? Okay, Barry, it's all on you. We're looking forward to seeing how you can put some nudges and prompts onto the assassin rods. Training, a couple of you have mentioned the importance of training of fishermen. This was for our RE tagging project. The surveys that we did with the anglers said they all want training on how to handle fish better. So we produced a series of videos, we put it out on YouTube, and these have proved to be very effective in changing the behavior of the anglers, giving them the knowledge and the skills, the ones that want it. Make the information easily accessible. Has anyone ever tried to find the fishing regulations in South Africa? Okay, was it easy? No, very, very difficult. And that's why we started at Sombra to really communicate with our anglers. We put all the regulations available easily on our website, which was still hidden. Bruce produced the Marine Fish Guide for Southern Africa app, which has got information on over 149 species of fish, biology, distribution, etc. But it's also got all the fishing regulations, and it's got the fish weight calculator. So this is a way of getting this into the hands of the anglers. If we could market it better, we'd be doing well, but we're still working on that. Making sure that we've got signage up where people are fishing. And then on the right-hand side, Bruce and Ryan put together a KML file that you can use on Google Earth to show fishermen exactly where the boundaries of our marine protected areas are and what you can do in each of those particular zones. So it's got the zonation and the boundaries of the MPAs. Make the information easy to understand. You'll see our display at the back. We actually just put that up for our little shop just in Kleinemunde down the road for the Christmas season, where we were trying to help fishermen understand why we need regulations, how we do the science that we do, and what we can do as fishermen. So please have a look at that display. It's just one example. I'm sure many of you have got wonderful examples of how to do this, but it's just our way of making the information easily accessible. Make the behavior easier to do. This is be creating a fishing app. Our fishermen said that if they were going to report tags more easily, they wanted an app to do it. So we're working on creating an app for the taggers. And then the old school ones still want to use either the telephone or the email, which is also okay. But how do we make the behavior easy? How do we share the facts? How many of you have heard about how the terrible trawlers and the industrial fishers are the main reason we've got no fish to catch from the shore? Okay, we've all heard about that. We need to share the facts. People need to understand the facts. We're not saying that the facts will change their minds, but at least we can share exactly what's happening in the fish that are being caught by those longliners are not the fish that are being caught by the recreational anglers. So we need to share the facts, but carefully. And then my last one here is show that it matters. Tell stories. Fish have got a little bit of an image problem. They don't look cute and cuddly. And people don't relate to them as animals. We still call them fish stocks. But the stories that were coming out now from our various tagging studies, both conventional tagging and acoustic tagging, and even the archival tags, are helping us to get a glimpse into fish's lives. Stories of kingfish all going back to Mozambique to spawn. Stories of Zambezi sharks moving around the whole coast. Bluefin tuna moving halfway around the planet. These are fascinating stories, and they help us to connect to individual fish, seeing them as individuals. Share those stories with fishermen, but don't share them just as facts. Specimen 222 moved from A to B over a distance of this. Tell the stories, and Bruce did this at the Shark and Ray Symposium, where he told the stories of some of our sand sharks, and he explained how Sally, the sand shark, moved down the coast, and then she spent Christmas off Christmas Bay, and then she decided she was going to move up the coast, up to Tinley Manor, or to Mozambique, or wherever it is. Tell stories, because ultimately we are all human, fishermen or not, and we are all driven far more by emotion than by any form of fact. Connect to people on a human level. Tell those stories. Show your passion and connect on an emotional level. Very, very effective. And then step 7, what could go wrong? Anytime we ask an audience to do something, let's think about the unintended consequences. What could go wrong? And an example of this is the Port Alfred Rock and Surf Club, where they tried to encourage anglers to handle their fish better. They were going for catch and release, and they said they must all use buckets on the beach. And in actual fact, what this did was cause a split in the club. So there are now 2 clubs, because the ones that wanted to change have changed, and the others said, no, this is how we do it, and we're going to stay doing it. So think about those possible unintended consequences and how we can mitigate against them. And then my last one is evidence over assumption. If you're going to try a behavior change campaign, look at how effective you've been. What have you changed? What has been the impact of that change? Is there more line being collected in your fishing line bins? Are we seeing a greater catch and release survival from the fish? What are the changes that you asked for, and has it worked? Because as I always say, hope, as in here's hoping it works, is not a sound communication strategy. And this is where often we need to start off again, right at the beginning. What is the behavior we want to change? What is happening now? And how can we measure the changes? So just to finalize, sum up, audience, who are we talking to? Know who holds the rod? What exactly is the behavior you want to change? What are the barriers? Is it knowledge, habit, etc.? Who is the messenger? Who's the best person to talk about this? What are the benefits? What's in it for them? How can we support that behavior change? What are unanticipated consequences? What could go wrong? And then finally, evaluate and most importantly, share. The time is now. I don't think that there has ever been a better time to be in recreational fisheries, science, and management. Here amongst us, you've got the incredible wisdom, you've got the skills, and you've got the passion to make the changes that are needed to ensure that our children and our grandchildren can enjoy the sport that we so much love. So together, I think that we can make a massive difference. Young people, the young students, you've got such an incredibly bright future ahead of you. We've learned so much in the past. We're going into a future that's got lots of uncertainty in it. But the one thing that you can be certain of is that this community is here to support you. We're here to share our lessons. We're learning together. We've come a long way. We've got a long way to go. But together, I know that we're making the differences that are needed, not just for the fish, but also for our planet. So I'd just like to end off with a thank yous to all of those who have helped me with this presentation and who've guided how I see fish and fishing and communicating with fishermen. Thank you to Inc. for help with the design of this presentation. They did it for me, which was wonderful. So thank you to all of you. You might not recognize the guy in the middle. On the left, we've got Warren and Josh. In the middle, we've got a really grumpy Matt. Then we've got Alex, Amber, and then Princess, who's also helped me with a lot of the communication work I do. And then I just want to end off with my co-author for this paper and actually the co-author of my life. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Questions for Judy? We've got a few minutes, Stan. We've got time. Yeah. Any questions on?
Thanks, Tom. I couldn't agree more, and I think that Warren might want to say something on this, but I think that this is really the direction. So in South Africa, we've realized that we cannot rely on the government. I won't make any more comments about that. We can't rely on the government to enforce any form of recreational fishing law enforcement. We need to rely on the individual anglers, and that's why if we look at how do we actually make those behavior changes happen through all of this, and there's lots more theory that we could use and bring into it, but that's really, I think, some of the essence of what Warren's wanting to do. So fully agree, Tom.
Excellent talk, Judy. I'm curious to see, when you work with scientists, with fisheries professionals, what is the biggest challenge that you see when you're trying to convince them that they need to become better communicators or go through these steps?
That's such a good question. And when I work with scientists, there are a whole lot of barriers. So one of the barriers to scientists is the way science is structured. You are not valued on your contribution to society. You are valued on your number of papers that you produce. So the currency of science for a long time has been based on publications. And that's where and South Africa is actually moving quite fast ahead in looking at how do we make our science of value to society. So that's one thing, the way, and I don't have time for all this community stuff. I don't have time for all this talking to fishermen, etc., etc. So that's one barrier, is the currency of science. Another barrier is fear. So fear that people won't understand them or they'll be misunderstood, etc., etc. So fear is another one. Working with journalists is another whole story. So there's huge amounts of fear working with journalists. And then also, again, I apply those principles to scientists. So looking at those barriers, is it fear? Is it I don't know how to do it? So I don't have the skills to communicate. What's in it for me? So I apply these same principles when I'm looking at science communication, which I do quite a bit of. But interestingly enough, this conference has given me a slightly different perspective of this science community, because I think you really are leading the way, and it would be actually quite nice to unpack what it is that has created the change in this community. Because what this community has shown me is that each individual makes a difference. Often we think it's up to structures and systems, but each of you in your own environment, or many of you in your own environment, has actually made a massive difference. And I know that many of you, you know who you are. You as an individual, maybe one or two of you, has made a difference to fishing and to how we perceive fish stocks and how fishermen perceive them. So you are incredible role models. So this community is quite unique, and I think that there are lots of skills here that we haven't tapped in the broader marine science world. So it's a good question, and I would love to actually do some research amongst this community and find out what it is that makes this so different. And I think one of them is that many of you actually love the sport. So there's a completely different driver to maybe if you're working on, I don't know, coccolithophores or something.
Thank you. Wonderful talk. With like so many global issues and global crises, and in some countries, I'm not going to name any, where you've got all sorts of crazy political situations. How do you think we get people to care when there's so much else in the world that has far more deeper effects on their well-being and circumstances?
So I love that question because it talks to, there's a group called the Conservation Behavior Change Group, which is an international, it's an IUCN group. And one of the things that through that and associated with that they've done is interview people around the world, looking at general attitudes to the environment, looking at attitudes to current situations, looking at how people are responding to the current situation. And what that research has revealed is that right now, people across the board, but particularly in the US, are gatvol. And that's a South African word that says, what's gatvol in another language? Fed up, yes. People are fed up. Trust in authority is at an all-time low. We do not trust leaders anymore. People are feeling that this climate change stuff is happening, but they don't know what else they can do. So there is that fear. And interestingly enough, the response of many people to that has been to go down local. So instead of trying to change the world, people are looking at what can I do in my community with the people I connect with. And I think that to me is the answer. We can't change the world. That big picture stuff is actually really scary. But what can we do, one fisherman, one local community in our own environment, and how can we empower that? So to me, it's not looking at the big picture. The more I look at the big picture, the more scared I get. And the more it makes me want to work local and do small changes in small communities and work on that ripple effect.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. What issue I'm struggling with myself, and I would like to hear your opinion, is the role of a scientist in the communication. Because we are all passionate and we have our own policy preference as well, and this is very hard to separate from the neutral facts, right? Whenever you mix in emotion and maybe your own preference is for catch and release or this type of regulation or MPAs, it's very hard to not blur that in. And as soon as you do that, externals will see you as non-neutral anymore, which will undermine the acceptance of science. So, or it could at least. So how do we balance that as a scientist? Or should we just not communicate and give it to an expert based on our facts? So that's my question.
I think that that's a great question, and it also talks to your question. And one of the things that scientists are scared of is communicating because of that very reason. And I think that for me now, climate change is the perfect example of how remaining a neutral, uninvolved scientist, that to me, and this is my personal opinion, the time for that is over. So if we want to remain completely neutral, unbiased scientists, here are the facts, do with it what you will. I don't believe that we can operate like that anymore. Our system is in such crisis that we actually have to show our passion, we have to show that we care, we have to give the facts, and if we think that we've got a certain opinion and we can back it up with our facts, we need to share that. I think that to pass on to somebody else who's going to be the science communicator is not as effective anymore. But that's my personal opinion. Other scientists you talk to will disagree with me, but I think the time for neutral science is over. I think that we need to now move into the we need to move into the field of really trying to drive change. But as I say, that's just my opinion.
I think
Okay, we're sort of running out of time, so thank you very much again, Judy, for a fantastic presentation, and I think you taught us all a lot. And just on behalf of everyone, and especially the organizing committee and all the time you took, it worked, there's a little gift, which I know we're going to enjoy on our walk. So,
Thank you.